Hey everyone, so Alex sent me his file. He was trying to get a mirrored effect on to the top of this concrete structure up here. And he was having a little bit of trouble kind of making it look realistic. Now, I do think that reflections are really hard to do in Photoshop, especially when you're not just dealing with straight up water or like really flat areas that are being reflected. If you notice, this one has a bit of a angle to it, so the reflection's not really going to be super accurate. This is just something that's you're going to get better at when you turn to 3D modeling and rendering within there. But to do a kind of Photoshop hack job of this, I'm going to try to see what I can do. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn the people off here so that we have a pretty clean ground plane. And then Alex, I noticed that these benches are like a little bit off kilter, and so I just wanted to straighten those out a little bit. So if anybody is looking at their perspective and wondering how to keep things vertical, if you don't see these ruler guides around your page, just press Control R and that will turn them on and off. And you can just drag guides straight from there. So you can check out your verticals and make sure that everything is upright. You could do the same with your horizontals as well. So I'm going to drag a couple of these down. And if you see, the benches are kind of tilted, and I don't think it's kind of making the foreground of the image look a little bit off kilter. So what I'm going to do is just grab those benches and make a distortion. So I'm going to go to Transform, Distort, I'll zoom out a little bit, and I'm just going to drag the corners here and here and kind of move this around a little bit until it basically matches up with my guidelines. Paying attention to the vanishing point along this edge as well. So to me that looks a little bit better, more straight, and I'm just going to cut off the edges of the bench down here just because I think they're looking a little bit long. And if I just go up here to view and then clear guides, I can see this bench looks a lot more oriented to the picture plane than it did before. So instead of doing the same thing with this one, I'm just literally going to copy that one. I just did that by pressing Control J, and I will resize it according to this view to get rid of the old one. It looks a little bit weird because these supports on this side are too short, so we can fix that. We'll do another little distortion just to get it right. And to lengthen these, I'm literally just going to duplicate them by pressing Control J, making a selection and pressing them and bringing them down like this. And then I will just lop off the ends at an angle. All right, so now that that's done, what I'm going to do is select all of the layers that are currently on, and except for the people, and then I'm just going to duplicate it. So everything is selected. I'm going to go Control J, and that makes a copy of everything, and then I'm going to go Control E. That's going to merge it into a JPEG. So I have my reflection JPEG, and if I move it around, you can see there's like the original layers are behind it. And so now I'm going to take a selection from about the middle of the page where the horizon line is, and I will just go Shift Control I to select the inverse and delete it. So now I have just the bottom half of this image is selected, and I'm going to do a flip. So Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical. Now you see there's some sky in here, and that's because there was some bits of photo references that were outside of the canvas. So I'm just going to select that and delete it. Okay, so we have our reflected ground plane, and I'm going to put it on 50% opacity just so I can kind of see where I want it. So a real reflection, if it was on a flat surface, would be projected directly above the ground plane. And I think that one of the problems that Alex is running into is that this roof is not actually oriented directly over top of this path. It is on this side. If you draw this corner down, you can see that this side kind of aligns with this upper edge up here. But on this side, if we draw the, if we imagined where the corner of this would be, it would be somewhere here and project out here. And the path would actually start should start right along here, like that. So I think basically, Alex, first thing is you're missing a little bit of fill here. And if you draw the correct vanishing point lines, I think that you would see that this area, this triangle, actually needs to have this ground plane graphic on it as well. So that might be something that you edit, but since we just want to get to a point where we can see the method for doing these reflections, I'm just going to go there right now. So I'll clear my guides, turn my reflection back on. Okay, so we have our reflection up here on the ceiling, and we can see these lines vanishing off into the distance. Sometimes it's a bit tricky. We think that actually, this should be over here because we want it to be, but actually if you look at the way the reflection is, you need to have those vertical lines matching up all of the lines of the elements. That's just how reflections work. So sometimes it's a bit deceiving. You think that you need to move or change the reflection, but you should just leave it the way it is, just like that. So I'm going to put this down into the roof group that you had going on here, and I'll grab this layer mask that you had just by control clicking on the layer mask, and I'm going to put it on the group itself. And that way everything within the group can be moved around, but the layer mask just stays in the same place. But in this case, I'm actually not going to move the reflection at all. I'm just going to leave it right where it is, because if you look at the lines of the benches, that's where it should be. So then I will maybe put this down a little bit and make a duplication and put that one to screen. It gives it a bit of a brighter color, and I'm going to duplicate it again and just keep going until I feel like this looks like a mirror effect. So the overlay looks pretty good to me. Maybe I'll turn that one up and turn this one down a bit. And I always like to name the blend modes. So this is overlay, this is screen. And now I'll link all of those so that they're all stuck together. And that's your reflection, basically. Now I saw that you had this water texture that I think you're trying to kind of get like a mirrored reflection from water, even though there is no water. I'm just going to show you maybe a little bit of a better way to do that, because I can see you're on the right track with this. But what I did was I went to search for a water noise texture, and I like the look of this one. I feel like it looks like a swimming pool. So I'm just going to right click on it and go open image in new tab. And then it brings up the full size image here, and I click on that little magnifying glass. It will open it up to the full resolution. So I will right click and go save image and save it to my downloads. And then I'll bring it in to the view. Put it over top. First, I'm going to bring it outside of this group so that we can see the whole texture. So using Control T to transform, I'm just going to resize this down, and then I will use the distort command. And I think that this can be tough for people to understand, but so essentially when you're distorting something according to a perspective, you want to drag the bottom half of the file to the end of the zone that you're going to be covering. And then you're going to like move your corners according to your vanishing point. So you see how this vanishing point is going down here? I'm kind of like mirroring that on this. And with this one, I'm going to drag it all the way over here because the vanishing point for this is over here. So now we have a texture that's essentially mapped to the correct perspective. And that's always what you want to do with your textures. I'm going to put it back under here. So it's got this correct layer mask on it, and I will just put it down to maybe overlay, and I'll just play with the opacity until I feel like it makes sense. Maybe 45. And if you don't like the color effect that it's adding, you can Control-Alt-U and then just bring the saturation down on the image. So now you have your reflection, you have your water texture. You can still play around with these opacities if you feel like it's too strong. Maybe you want to just dial it back a little bit. But this is essentially how you do a reflection. So you don't want to distort it, you don't want to resize it, you don't want to move it around. This is the real reflection that is happening from the ground plane.